a podcast about amazing people from an incredible state. Amazing Arizonans with Mike Broomhead.
This edition I've been waiting for a long time for Amazing Arizonans. I don't think it would be possible to talk about it without having you on the podcast. It's Dr. Crow from ASU. Thanks for doing this.
Happy to be here.
I want to start about you, and I want to get into ASU and its progression over the years. Tell me about your path in education. I've read a little bit about your biography, but how did you get here from where you started?
You know, for me, I came from a working class family, military family. My dad was in the Navy, lots of kids, moved around a lot. My mom died along the way. We got split up, 17 schools along the way, moved 21 times before I went to college. So just lots and lots of discipline, but disruption along the way. So I ended up going to Iowa State, throwing the javelin there. Ended up going to this great graduate school called the Maxwell School for Citizenship and Public Affairs at Syracuse, which is America's oldest school on how to design democracy to be successful. And they don't take very many graduate students, and it was like an unbelievable experience. I went back to Iowa State as a faculty member, worked there building things that solved problems for people, research centers, research initiatives, and so forth. Ended up getting picked up by the major leagues at Columbia. And for me, it was sort of like an athletic contest. I'm going to go there, be a great faculty member. I made deputy provost there, and I was involved in building innovations in all kinds of areas of thinking and knowledge and know-how and traveling all over the world. It was really fantastic.
Was there a lot of pushback? I don't want to interrupt you, but is there a lot of pushback if you're trying to, whenever you're kind of blazing a new trail? Were people nervous about new ideas and making some of those changes?
Always.
How do you get around that part of it?
So the way that I work is I engage in everything, just like we were talking before we started the interview about knowledge and history. And so the way I work with people pushing back is, let's talk about what your thoughts are. Let's talk about what their basis is. So it's intellectual approach. So it's intellectual debate, intellectual arguments. I mean arguments in the productive sense. And most of the time, you can find consensus. You can find some way to move forward. You can find, oh yeah, okay, or you can just say, listen, that's a stupid idea. I don't think you're going to make it very far, but good luck. And then I'll say, well, if I need you along the way, can I count on you to give me some help? And almost everybody will say yes. And so what I was learning along the way, and what I was really motivated by was, how do we design our democracy to be as powerfully creative as our founders intended it to be. So they created this like unbelievable design. I don't even know where they came up with all this. I mean, it came from lots of experiences in Europe and England and Scotland and Ireland and Wales and all the conflicts going on there. And then they come to the United States and they have this dream. And so for me, I saw along the way the sort of uneven outcomes. The uneven economic outcomes, smart kids that didn't have a chance to go to school, or smart kids that couldn't get out of high school, and then, bad things that happened to them. And so along the way, I decided that I wanted to be involved in the designing of a new kind of university. And so Arizona seemed to me to be the place where there were still welcome ideas. They're still welcoming people with new ideas here. They were very entrepreneurial here, very individualistic here. Very willing to have what I think of as open arguments here. There's no class running everything here. You can be a newcomer here, bring your ideas here, make things happen here. So along the way, I became involved in the designing of universities, and this was the place I wanted to be.
It's interesting. I came here in 1995, and one of the things I fell in love with in Arizona is people are fiercely independent. Mm-hmm. They are strong in their beliefs, but they make room for yours for the most part. The politics of today may be a little different, but for the most part, isn't Arizona like that?
Absolutely. And so it absolutely has been the case. In fact, when I was recruited here, they said, well, we're looking for someone that's accomplished the kind of things that you've accomplished. I designed by that point, 50 different kinds of new learning and research and discovery enterprises. I'd helped launch 5 or 6 or 7 completely unheard of things that had never been developed before. And the guy that was the chairman of the search committee, a guy named Don Ulrich, who was on the Board of Regents at the time, he said, what we're looking for is somebody that's not just we don't want an administrator. We don't need administrators. We need an entrepreneurial academic executive capable of designing a whole new university. So what he was looking for was more innovation, more creativity, less reliance on the government, less reliance on government control and government financing, less bureaucratic. And I said, if that's what you're looking for, I'm your guy. And that was 21 years ago.
Did they from day one stand by that? I mean, they said they wanted it, but when you started coming up with these ideas, were they game for you to do them?
They were, so long as I could deliver the resources and the people to make them happen, which 95% of the time I do. So that's pretty good. And so the answer is yes.
When I moved here, and I've used this analogy when talking about the work you've done and the changes you've made, I start with Arizona State being known as one of the biggest party schools in the country in the mid-'90s, late '90s. Driving here today to the campus, this is a completely different atmosphere, just being on campus than it was then. Was what you have now the vision, or did that vision develop along the way to get to where you are?
No, so what I thought was possible, what I thought the U.S. needed, and this is literally what I thought. In fact, you can go back and look at the speech I gave in November of 2002, which was called my inauguration. I didn't call it that, but that's what they called it. You know, big deal, 3,000 people in the audience, that kind of thing. And so I outlined the idea for what we call the new American university. Now, you could have called it what American universities should have been.
Right.
But I just decided to call it the new American university. And it meant that we would be highly accessible. I did away with the affirmative action office. I did away with all those kinds of things. I started focusing on just make the university accessible the way that it's supposed to be by going out and finding everybody that's qualified and getting them to come and helping those that aren't qualified to come. It would be highly excellent. That is, we would have a faculty as good as the faculty at Columbia, but serving this broader student body, and that's really hard to pull off. And we would be deeply impactful on the community. So that was the proposal that I made. So I outlined the idea of a vision, which is now our charter: inclusion versus exclusion to measure our success. Do research that benefits the public more than any other thing, not just your little academic medals, but do something that's going to make the country better, defend the country more, drive the economy forward, solve problems, deal with opioid epidemics, whatever it is, work on those kinds of things, and then take responsibility. Stop being just academic whiners.
But to that point, the research that was done here at ASU during COVID, in COVID testing, that was an incredible thing that was able to be accomplished coming out of here.
Yeah, in fact, the meeting I was just in was with some of our key people. You know, our team developed our own test. We had 240 research groups working on COVID. COVID is still around, and so we're still working on more vaccines that don't require refrigeration. So right now, if you take the Moderna vaccination, it has to be kept at 100 below zero. You know, that's not great. And so we're working on all that stuff. And so ASU has been morphed into one of the greatest research universities ever built, while at the same time being unbelievably accessible. That's what we set out to do. That's what we're doing. On the whole party school thing, I remember when I first got here, the Arizona Republic ran some story about some porno films being made over in one of our university facility, and then the party rankings and so forth and so on. I remember going into Sue Clark Johnson, the then publisher of the newspaper, and she was running this on the front page of the paper, and I said, "Why do you do this? What's the purpose of this? You know, these are misbehaving individuals, not a misbehaving institution." And so we had a set to meeting there in the first interaction that we had, and I said, I hope you guys can find a way to cover what we actually do as an institution, rather than what some individual person says or does, because we're going to have people screwing up all the time, and you're going to spend all your time thinking about that. And so what we've got now is we have in fact, last year only 4 universities in the U.S. had students that won a Rhodes Scholarship, a Marshall Scholarship, and a Truman Scholarship, the 3 most elite awards for undergraduates in the whole country. Only 4 universities in the whole country, only 1 public university. That was us, our kids. And so we're doing that kind of stuff now. We just got elected to the what's something called the AAU. Think of it as, you just got elected to the greatest research universities in the world organization. Well, we were just elected to that.
That's an incredible accomplishment. But the vision part of that is what is so hard for people like me and others. Once you see it, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But it's the visionary that sees it before it happens that knows it's going to work.
I was 100% certain. 99. I was 99% certain that Arizona was this uncut gem, that if you cut it, you'd cut it differently because it's a different kind of place. And I call it, we're one of the live free or die states, like New Hampshire. So I like that.
I do too.
And I knew that in this live free or die state, you could have the possibility of building at scale a truly democratic institution called a university, and make things happen. And Colorado is a place where you can get a lot of things done. Here, there's only a few places you could get this done. So literally, I made this proposal. That was what's in my speech. Took a lot of pounding along the way, found a lot of people that wanted to implement this, and now we have become this new American university. I mean, that's really what we've been able to do.
And before we talk about some of the individual accomplishments and things that this university offers that I think are so unique and beneficial to the world, what about, though, let's talk about the cultural part of this, because the belief by many is that universities are largely liberal and that they are kind of closed-minded to any other school of thought. But you've pushed against, would you say you've had to push against that here, or do you think the culture here disallows that?
I have not had to push against that. So the whole use of the word liberal is complicated because the original use of the word liberal
classic liberal
is related to liberty, and individuality and individual rights and the liberalization of the person. And so universities were designed to help facilitate that. Now politically, there's lots of people in universities that are liberal versus conservative. It varies. I mean, we're a more balanced institution in the sense that we have faculty that have a wide range of political views. They come from a wide range of cultural and religious backgrounds, very wide range. And so there's not been a lot of that here, nor did I expect that there would be, because this is more of an independent-minded location.
But it's also the way, from an outsider's perspective, when things have popped up, the issue with the Multicultural Center, when something like that happened, it seems as if the administration here at ASU handled it very quickly, and it went away very quickly, where it could have blown up into a bigger issue. How do you handle those things when they pop up? What's your philosophy on those things?
Well, in general, immediate action, immediate acquisition of the actual facts, immediate sorting of the actual facts, immediate investigation of what's actually going on. So in that case or other cases, it's like, well, who said what, who did what did they do? And not what the media is talking about or somebody else is talking about. So we go at it, and then we say to the faculty, and we say to others, this is how we're going to sort things out. And here's our student code of conduct. Here's our faculty code of conduct. We live to these principles. We live to these guidelines. I don't really care what's going on in the rest of the world or the rest of the country. I don't really care, that you think this is related to this or that. It isn't. I mean, this is us here. So the way that we look at things is everybody's responsible for their actions. Everybody's responsible for their behavior. And we hold people accountable. I mean, this is an institution that you're held accountable. So it used to be that there's all the old day sort of classical things that, faculty members taking advantage of students and having inappropriate relationships with them. The first few of those people that we fired for inappropriate relationships with students, that sent the word out.
Sure.
The first few tenured faculty members who lost their tenure because of underperformance, well, that then indicates that you have to continue to perform. Tenure is an unbelievable grant of rights. It's not lifetime employment. It's a grant of rights. And the grant of rights for your lifetime, if you have tenure, is that you can pursue the academic questions you want to pursue without interference. And you won't be fired because of your work. You'll be able to do whatever you want. Now, in academia, you have to do that. And so what we did here was we put down a better definition of behavior. We put down a better definition of openness. We put down a better definition of what it means to be egalitarian. We made the student body very broad rather than narrow from a certain group of folks. We asked our faculty to focus on the success of our students as the number one objective, not necessarily their success, but the success of our students. We blended all of that together. And then when things within the broader culture conflicts and cultural debates that are going on pop up, we really want to get to the facts and then sort it out and then hold people accountable for their behavior. That's the way that we approach things, and it's instantaneous.
When you talk about some of the individual accomplishments, I can't start that conversation without the Cronkite School,
right?
Because we have benefited. I personally have benefited so greatly in working in a newsroom where I work with really talented people that came to us and started their careers as interns from the Cronkite School in our building and have grown into some of the most respected people just here in town in the business. with that, what was your belief in that? What was it about the Cronkite School that made you say, we need to have that here in Arizona?
So if you go back in history and you look at the emergence of what we presently think of American democracy and American republicanism, the way our republic is organized, and you look at the emergence, particularly in England, of newspapers that could hold different political views, and the way that those views were expressed, and the way that the news organizations of the 17th century in particular, into the emergence of the United States, the role of the newspapers, the role of Ben Franklin, for instance, in the emergence of the American Revolution. His brother was imprisoned for 6 months in Massachusetts for saying things that the local Puritan leaders in Massachusetts didn't really like. If you then look at the role of the press during the American Revolution, leading up to the Civil War, during the Civil War, you just see that the press really is the fourth estate. And so when I got here, what that means is it's absolutely unequivocally essential to democracy. Mm-hmm. The notion of investigative reporting and reporting the news and telling your views and having newspapers of different political persuasions. Well, the answer is, heck yeah, that's how we got here. That's how we got all the ideas on the table. That's how we, your idea might lose, but at least you had a chance to put it out there. And so when I got here, Cronkite was buried inside a school, inside a college, inside a basement. And I decided, no, we need to pull out Cronkite, turn it from into its own college, give it its own new building, give it an identity, create this unbelievable facility, facilitate their resource base in a way where they could grow and evolve, and then drive journalism forward, not as a thing where people say, well, the world doesn't need journalists. Are you kidding me? There's journalists everywhere, inside every organization, inside churches. There's the people that are telling the news. There's journalists everywhere, not just newspaper writers. And so what it was to build this, world-class, unbelievably driven by the idealism of Walter Cronkite himself, sort of just the facts, sort of a Joe Friday type, right, versus what's happened to a little bit of the news these days. And so that's why we pulled journalism out, gave them the special resources, built this new facility for them, and then now are still creating opportunities for them to be successful.
So are you concerned, is it a personal concern of yours? You just mentioned some of the ways the directions media has gone now with the what seems to be the far left in media, the far right in media. Are you concerned about that, choosing a pathway and kind of going down one road instead of it being just the facts? It's my opinion in the facts as well.
Well, the United States has always had highly diverse, highly differentiated newspapers, news organizations, organs of public opinion, generating stories and so forth. Always. It's always had that. It's always had a far left. It's always had a far right. It's always had oppositional parties. It's always had party conflicts. Always. It always will. Or because the second that it doesn't, then we're no longer an actual democracy.
Does it concern you when the government starts talking like a ministry of truth or fact-checking? That's got to be a scary factor for anybody.
That's very scary in a democracy. So there would have been no emergence of the papers that took on the British Crown if the British Crown had come in and collapsed. If the Crown they tried to, in the South, in the American South, they did do a lot of speech control in the South by controlling what, there were no stories about abolitionists that were allowed, right, et cetera, all kinds of things. And you saw the outcome of that. They failed. That system failed. I think what we have going on right now is we have this forced high-speed digestion. So we have two factors that have occurred that really hadn't occurred in the past. So one is 24-hour cable. And so I'm addicted to all that stuff. So I'm just going through all the stations, listening to CNN, listening to Fox.
Everything's breaking news.
Yeah, everything, and then every story is breaking news, and it generates fear, and it's designed to generate viewers. And I think that's, I'm like, where's that old day when you turned on CNN and they just told you the news?
Right.
And I don't know where that is now. I can't find it now. And then the second thing is the internet. So the internet is something humans have never had before. So it used to be in the past. So you'd have the conservative paper, you'd have the John Birch Society writing, you'd have the Marxists writing, you'd have the communists writing. They'd all be producing their stuff, but it only came out like once a week, or if it was a daily newspaper. Mm-hmm. So you had these little digestions of this stuff.
Right.
And so socially and personally, we don't know how to deal with it. So what we have now is we have people being activated over and over and over, almost like you're being stung by mosquitoes, or you've got ants crawling up your legs or something. And so you have all this stuff that you can't control. So we're at a moment where we don't know how to manage that. And I think that's really had, even in the last, 5 or 6 years, 7 years, that's been a huge factor in some of the complexities we've been facing now.
But some of the greatness of those tools is the fact that you can have immediate access to what's happening. Imagine if we didn't have what we have now, and this tragedy that just happened in Maui was going on, and how long it would take us to get accurate information.
Now we know instantly. Yeah,
instantly.
Yeah. But that's breaking. That is real breaking news.
Right.
Now the other thing, like I use the Apple News service, which is unbelievably popular, and I have about 55 search phrases that I use for the stories I'm most interested in. I'm like died and gone to heaven. I mean, all these things I'm interested in. So I have one for what's going on in the Democratic Party, what's going on in the Republican Party, what's going on in this area of politics or that area of science or this area of engineering, and all the things I'm interested in. It's just feeding me this stuff on a constant. I must hit that thing 20 times a day.
Yeah.
And then it's just constantly updating. And if you look at Drudge Report, so Drudge is not just collecting all these articles and making this stuff happen. So to me, those are far better than when I was in college and I would go to the library and I'd take the newspapers off the rack on the little wooden spool and flip through the New York Times or flip through the Wall Street Journal to sort of see what was going on, Des Moines Register to see what was going on. And I like this much better. So yeah, it's got upside, tremendous upside.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. When I was young, I grew up in Southwest Florida, and when the Challenger disaster happened, I watched that happen live.
January of '86.
Yeah, and you could see it from as far away as I was on the other coast. You could still see the vapor trail. Oh, wow. But then that afternoon, the only time that I remember our local newspaper had an extra that afternoon, and they were selling them on the street corners. And I still have it. But it is so now to look back on that and think that was such a unique, almost instantaneous response. Whereas now, you're hours late. Yeah. Now you see things in minutes.
No. So what's happening? So for those of us that, maybe like you and me that are news junkies and want to know what's going on, and so we're like died and gone to heaven. I also can discern, wheat from chaff, or shoe polish from non-shoe polish. I can discern these things. Not everybody can. So, a lot of my relatives, who live in different parts of the country, but a lot of them are concentrated on my father's side in Missouri, where he was from, they're like, well, Michael, what about this? Or Uncle Mike, can you tell me about this? And so I'm like, so then they want to know, like, is this real?
Yeah.
Or my stepmother calling me up asking me, is this real? And I'll say, well, no, Mom, that's not real.
Yeah. How do you develop? Can you develop that discernment, or is that something you think you're born with, or do you?
Oh no, you can develop it. And so I think that this, even some of the stuff we're going through right now, even some of the ways that all the stuff that just there does seem to be very intense things.
Oh my gosh,
yeah. And so you look at all of that. And I was just reading just over the weekend, or during I was traveling this week. And I was listening to this book that I was mentioning to you on the history of Great Britain, and the author Simon Schama was talking about the English Civil War. Okay, whatever we're going through, it wasn't that.
Yeah,
it's not that. And so we're arguing. They're killing each other.
Right.
We're having some demonstrations. They're killing each other. By the thousands in some cases, tens of thousands. Hundreds of thousands in the English Civil War in a small country that was under 10 million people at the time. And so I think what we have now is we just have so much information, and it's so hard to sort of sort it out. What we need are, one of the things that we're going to need with AI, for instance, is we're going to need, this picture is real. That's a real picture, not a modified picture.
Right.
Or your voice, which is very unique. Somebody could model it and AI it. They've already done it for me, and it's kind of scary. They showed me giving a speech that I never gave.
I was on CNN with Allison Camerata on a panel, and one of the topics of the hour was AI. And
were you on Zoom or were you over there?
I was there. Mm-hmm. I was in New York. Yeah. And at the end of the segment, first of all they did AI pictures of all of us, and of course I was the angry guy, but they did her voice. It was unreal.
Yeah. No, I saw this thing of me. So they had me give a speech that I've never given. And I knew it wasn't me and people that I live around, but not everybody would. And so we're gonna have to figure out, how to manage all this. Now, I'll also say, it really bothers me that people don't realize how far we've come, like where we are. what we have achieved as a country, what we've been able to do. I mean, it is beyond belief. I mean, we're using third-tier weapon systems in the hands of Ukrainian patriots to defeat the front line of the Russian army, and it's just unbelievable. I mean, those are things that Americans have come up with and figured out, how to use these particular missile systems or what have you. And so we're doing that, and we're going to be sending a team up to the moon here soon. We have a mission leaving Florida in October to go to an asteroid called Psyche, 270 million miles away, made completely of metal that's the size of Massachusetts. And what are we doing with all of that? I mean, that then becomes the basis for asteroid mining. So people keep thinking that we're all going to hell in a handbasket and the whole world's going to end. I'm like, no. Are you kidding me? You guys have been asleep if you don't know what's been accomplished in the last 400 years. It's beyond belief.
My on a maybe in the same vein but in a different topic, to hear in my business all the time, it's because it's such political conversation that when the Republicans have control, the Democrats say, we'll never get America back. It's going to be ruined, and vice versa. To hear the Republicans say, if we reelect Barack Obama, the country will never be the same. And then for how people just haven't figured out by now that the greatness of America, it really has nothing to do with one president. Right. And I think that I wish we could take that deep breath and realize we're going to fight like crazy.
Well, you remember the design of the presidency was to do two functions, three. So first, to be the commander-in-chief, to protect and defend the people, and we do a pretty good job of that.
We do.
And so everybody's got to think twice before they lift their finger or their sword towards us, because you won't have your finger or your sword after that. And then the second thing is chief magistrate. That was what they used to call the job, chief executive, chief magistrate, and that basically meant town manager. And so it basically meant you implement what the people want as they articulate through Congress. Thank you. And then the last job for the president is to be there when the nation needs a leader. And they don't always rise to leadership. And so it's kind of interesting. I don't know if you read David Brooks's column a little while ago about it was something like roll on, river, roll on. And it had to do with the U.S. economy since 1990. So 1990, George Bush Senior is the president.
Yeah, 41.
Yeah, then Clinton, and the whole story. So we get Republicans, Democrats, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then he explains the U.S. economy since 1990. It's unbelievable. Outperformed everybody in every possible way. Outperformed everybody in new workers, new training, new outcomes, new this, new that. I mean, in every possible, all the Europeans combined, the Chinese, everybody, in every possible way. And so what he said was, welcome to the United States. He equated it to the Mississippi River. Roll on. Yeah. Just roll on. And it's just this, we have created this place in which we can have these arguments. We can have these debates. We can, within the, for all the people who believe that there's less justice out there. I mean, Derek Chauvin is in prison for the rest of his life. Those 3 guys in Georgia that shot that guy running through their neighborhood, they're in jail for the rest of their lives. And I'm just saying now, what I'm saying is that we are making progress on many, many, many fronts related to, are we perfect? No. Perfection is very difficult to attain. But the country, under all these presidents, back and forth, the progress that we've made is almost unbelievable.
Yeah, when you pause for a moment, as you said, I think it's the right way to say it. We have a long way to go sometimes, but if we don't pause sometimes and see how far we've come, growing up in South Florida, being around a lot of the Cuban community, I was just reading today about how bad the Cuban economy is right now. Worst it's been since the fall of since the fall of the Soviet Union. Was it in Iraq now that there are certain words that the media is not allowed to use in describing things? You're not allowed to use the word homosexual in Iraq in the press. That you've got to use the phrase deviant. I think it's what is the word you have to use. We are so far ahead of all of that.
It's unbelievable.
That doesn't mean we don't work on progress.
Yes.
But we do have to acknowledge how far we've come with progress.
All of that, and then also the other thing is that along the way, I've said this to some of my very, very progressive friends. I say, yes, and you've got to worry about the feelings of the people that disagree with you, and they need to worry about your feelings also. And so what I'm saying is that the progress that we've made and continue to make, socially, culturally, economically, it is unparalleled in the world. It is really. I'm a huge a believer that the democracy that was designed, that we have been a part of, is the experiment. It is the experiment. And there are variations of it, certainly. And there may be ways that it needs to dramatically improve. I hope so. I mean, improvement is a big deal. But it is the experiment. And so even all this stuff that we've done at ASU has been, how do we make that better? So this notion of inclusion. So our student body used to be mostly white, mostly middle class. And we had a low graduation rate back when we had these earlier reputations. Our student body now is as diverse as the population. We're performing at the same level in terms of graduation rates as Michigan State and Purdue, which admit A and B students from high school, just like we do. And we're performing at the highest levels of almost anything that any university is doing. That is a truly egalitarian, democratically focused institution. Now, it also is the case. We'll have 83,000 students on campus this fall from every state, every part of Arizona, 158 countries. And so I can't tell you who or what will say what in the next academic year. But what I can tell you is that this place works, and this model works, and this notion that you can have access and excellence in the same institution. Our faculty and our staff and our team have figured out how to do that.
One of the big criticisms here in Arizona is the quality of education K through 12. And I know that you work on that as well here on campus. I have a friend who is a teacher here. I think she's high school teacher, and she loves the program so much. Why the focus on that, and what do you think you're doing differently that other school districts may need to, if they focused on it, they'd improve?
So one of the things I thought that was a failing of the past was the universities became elitist and separatist, and they weren't connected. So the most elite universities in the country, they might have a college of education, and if they do, it doesn't train very many teachers. It trains only professors.
Right.
And so we still are one of the largest trainers of teachers, but also I felt that this separation from K-12 was wrong. So along the way, we have built multiple charter schools. We have almost 100% graduation rate in our charter schools, where we've trained during COVID 20,000 Arizona teachers in how to use new technologies. We've become deeply committed to taking every innovation that we're building at ASU and trying to find a way to scale it to K-12, to be helpful to K-12, both through demonstration, through partnership, through alliances, everything imaginable. So what we've decided to do is to work with everybody. Now, the one thing that we don't do enough of in K-12, it's right now it's too structured. It's not creative enough or innovative enough. I spoke to 1,600 teachers the other day in the Mesa Public School District, and my objective, the superintendent, what she wanted me to do was talk about innovation, how to stimulate innovation, how to make things happen on an innovative perspective. And so for us, what we're trying to do is to stimulate innovation everywhere. K-12, at the university, lifelong learning. So right now, you'd be what we call a universal learner. We have now thousands of courses available for you, hundreds of thousands of ways for you to learn, hundreds of thousands of learners in that category. You're not in college. You just want to pick something up. You just want to learn something. Right. You just want to do this. You want to do that. Maybe you want to get another job. And so we put huge emphasis on that. So we've tried to break down the notion that college is just this little elite moment for a few kids that can go away to college, and that's the whole thing that we do. No, we have too many resources, too many people, too many great thinkers, too many ways of doing things. And now we built all these technologies to make this stuff happen. And so now we can reach to K-12, we can reach to students. We have thousands and thousands of students that are attending high school with us because high school didn't work for them. We have ways earning their way into ASU. So a few years ago, we had a woman take our online generic learning courses from behind Taliban lines in Afghanistan. She wrote us one day and she said, well, I took your 4 courses and I got an A+ in all your courses. Can I come to your university? I can't go to school here because it's against the law. I'll be killed. Mm-hmm. So we're like, okay. So we figured out how to get her over here, got her in here, got her through here, got her educated, moved her off to graduate school. We now have, not all from Afghanistan, but we have 4,800 people like her that we've admitted by finding a way to take courses that we've created robot tutors, digital ways to enhance your learning outcomes, ways for you to take these courses to get ready to go to college, to get ready to move your life forward. So we've changed everything in how we do things. We've made the university accessible to basically anybody.
I was a terrible high school student.
Yeah.
Very good basic education, very good reader, math skills at the elementary level.
Yeah, verbal skills.
Yeah, verbal skills. But then in high school, I was a terrible student. Education was the last thing I thought about.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I got older and when I found the trade and when I found this industry. But I look back now and I say, thank God for those teachers at the elementary level that gave me the basic, I call it a tool belt, that when I was ready to go back and learn, when I took it seriously, I had the equipment to do that.
Well, then you get exactly what I talk about when I say that. So K-12's job is to prepare the learner. If you have a chance to go to college, it's a way to become a master learner. Now, you're a self-taught master learner, but you had the tools. You were prepared to be a learner. And so what we've done is we're messed up on a lot of dimensions right now. So everyone should be graduating from high school. You might not graduate till you're 25, but that's okay.
Right.
You know, you get off on drugs, something happens to you along the way, your parents die. I mean, all kinds of things are happening.
Got to go to work, help support the family, whatever.
Yes. And so we need to find a way to get so high school should be looked at like a level of learning ability, not a level of learning, but a level of learning empowerment. And we need to get everybody kind of up to that level. Some people will go to university, some will go into the military, some will go to tech school, some will go to work, some will work in their family, some will work on the farm, some will do this. And then you need to make the learning activities available for the rest of that person's life. Now, we've taken that on. So I've restructured the entire institution. So we're now a knowledge enterprise, which is us creating knowledge for the future that has 30,000 people, including students, working in it, with almost approaching $1 billion of funding a year to make that happen. Call that our research and development. What we call the academic enterprise is you coming here or coming here online to get a degree. So this year we'll have about 180,000 people getting degrees from us, about half online, about half on campus. And then the last thing that we're just building, we have 200 people working to build this, is what we call the learning enterprise. So what do you need to know? You want to know how to homeschool your kids? We got the curriculum for you. We'll teach you how to do that. You want to work at TSMC as a microelectronics technician? We've got courses that can take you from being a regular electrician to being a microelectronics technician. Well, we've got those courses for you to be able to do that. And so we've decided to be all those things, and we figured out how to use all of our assets to that purpose. So we're now an academic enterprise, a knowledge enterprise, and a learning enterprise.
Before we end this, because I know you're on a schedule, got to talk about what everybody's talking about.
Yeah.
We got to talk about the big move from the Pac-12.
Oh, yeah, tell me about it.
I mean, I'm sure your ears have been burning since the announcement was made. But I
try to avoid the torches that people are putting in my ears.
Well, but let's talk about that, because it's a big move.
Yeah.
And in the minds of many people, should have happened a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I've had people tonight, when people found out I was talking to you, they've asked me, find out why they were so loyal to the Pac-12 for so long.
Let me give you the answer to that. So I was an athlete in college. I don't know if you knew that.
I did.
I was a Division I javelin thrower at Iowa State.
You and Garth Brooks.
Yeah. I don't know about that. I don't know how far Garth threw it, but he seems like kind of a stud there. So
he was at Oklahoma State, I believe.
Well, that was in the Big 8 at the time. So my loyalty to the Pac-12 wasn't for the Pac-12 as the Pac-12. It was to regional athletic conferences competing against each other and then competing nationally. So I'll just go all the way back. So I've been deeply disappointed that the football championship series, the selection of the bowl series, isn't the conference champions.
Right.
That it's a committee and so forth and so on. And that's fine, but I just thought that you should have these conferences. You shouldn't have to fly 4,000-mile round trip or a 5,000-mile round trip to play a volleyball game. Remember, we have over 20 sports.
Yeah.
And so I was interested in old school regional conferences. The Big 8 in the Midwest, the SEC in the South, the Atlantic Coast running kind of along the coast, the Mountain West, the Pac-12. Partly from the perspective of what are we asking our student athletes to do, partly from the perspective of not getting to a scale where you have 20 or 30 or 50 teams in a single conference and winner take all. I mean, so our assignment is to produce great student athletes, to graduate them, to compete at the highest level of athletic performance, to demonstrate to the country what competitiveness really is, to produce a few professional athletes, which we do, and to produce a lot of Olympic athletes, which we do, between the colleges. And so my commitment to the Pac-12 would have been the same as if I was in the Big 12 at the time, or the Big 8, or any other conference. And that is, could we keep sports college at scale? Could we keep sports in the spirit of the athletes that made some kind of sense. And we're sort of past that now.
So what was the decision maker for you? What was it where it said, okay, this is a better option for ASU?
Well, so in the last year, the Pac-12 CEO Council met dozens and dozens and dozens of times. And then last week, I think I canceled 30 meetings of my normal meetings to deal with Pac-12, Big 12 issues. And so, we had what I thought was a great offer from Apple. Most of the fan base didn't think it was a great a great deal, but I don't think they knew that much about it. So basically what the Apple deal was Apple would spend $500 million in the first year to take all the football games, all the men's basketball games, and all the women's basketball games in the Pac-12, digitally capture them and make them available to everyone. And you could play the games whenever you wanted to play them. That's a huge, huge, huge thing. And all of the data from those games would be available. So you could zoom in on Mike Broomhead, the player. You could zoom in on, great plays. You could be watching all the games at the same time if you wanted. There was going to be a fee for that, and that was the big uncertainty. And then a guarantee of a certain price, a certain income to the schools, and then a joint partnership going forward of anything above the guarantee would be a 50-50 split. So from my perspective, you kept the Pac-12 together as a regional conference. You move towards the broader football championship now, which now is going to have 8 teams instead of 4 teams. And that meant that the conferences would really be there. And then you'd have this whole new way to broadcast digitally all of your content. Most of us thought that was a pretty good deal, including me. Along the way, others didn't think that was a good deal. Maybe that Apple shouldn't do that. And so at the last second, the Big Ten, working, I would guess, with their media groups, picked off 2 teams on Thursday of last week. This is only 1 week ago.
Yeah.
So there was a big meeting scheduled for Friday morning.
And big markets.
Yeah, all big, yeah. Friday morning, last week, 7 a.m. We're all supposed to get together and be ready to roll, rock and roll. Well, 2 schools don't show up. I'm like, that's not good. That could mean the Pac-12 is being threatened. I mean, it really meant that. It really meant that it was done at that point. And so by 10:30 that morning, and I'm not going to walk you through everything that would allow this to happen, but that meeting was at 7. That meeting ended right before 8. And by 10:30, I was meeting with the commissioner of the Big 12 and 3 of the presidents. Now, just imagine that.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't just happen.
Right.
And then later that afternoon, they accepted our desire to join them, and we next year will be a part of that conference. And so what this is we make very hard decisions here,
right,
with lots and lots of diligence and lots of focus, and we do listen to everybody. The inputs about this and this and this and this, and so at that point, regional conferences gone.
Would you have made the decision to go if it broke up the rivalry game with U of A?
We had already committed, Bobby Robbins and I had already committed that we weren't going anywhere but together. No.
And it's important to keep that bowl game. It's great for me because I'm a Miami Hurricane.
Yeah.
And so I can watch that just for the passion and the rivalry that it is.
Yeah.
I don't have that emotional investment. It doesn't matter what the records are of the school. It is a great game every year.
So Arizona and Arizona State, we are sisters, rivals with each other, jealous from time to time of each other, and we have all of the things that go on in real families. I mean, this is like a real family. You love each other, you argue with each other, you stomp out sometimes, but we had decided as a family that we were not separating. And so we made that decision a long time ago, Bobby Robbins and I, President Robbins and I, and that's the way that it went down. And he and I talked dozens and dozens and dozens of times in the last few weeks.
One of the other things, again, the criticisms that come, I'm not a sports guy, but the criticisms have been, you have such a requirement for excellence at this university. Yeah. There's been a lot of questions about your loyalty to the athletic director, and that maybe some of the decisions that were made weren't the excellence in athletics that you hold the standard to academics. How do you respond to that?
Well, so what's interesting, loyalty is a powerfully important characteristic of any person, certainly the people that I deal with, and certainly me in the way I deal with others. But having said that, I am responsible for the outcome of all the things that we're doing, and one needs to take a broad, long-term look at what we're doing. We used to graduate no one from athletics. No one. Football team, very few people graduated. Basketball team, very few people graduated. We now are the second highest performing entity academically in the Pac-12 and one of the highest in the United States. So we have a high performing set of student athletes actually graduating and moving forward with their lives, with their degrees in their hands. And I'm very proud of that because it's been very important in football. While we've also been underperforming in football and underperforming in basketball, men's basketball, we believe that we are still in the hunt. And that means then that when we come back and become athletically more competitive, we will then be both academically and athletically competitive at the highest possible level. And not everyone can say that. And so my commitment is to that outcome. In all things and with all people, you know, I hold everyone accountable for all kinds of outcomes. And so net, we've made huge progress in athletics. We now have to make progress in football. You know, we have fired 2 coaches in the last several years. That's been very expensive. This coach, Coach Dillingham, young, kind of a savant in football. I mean, people are talking about him as if, you know, he's a prodigy. And so we'll see if prodigy can happen here. And in basketball, men's basketball, we are making serious progress. In women's basketball, new coaches. And if you look at all of our sports, you know, where we are, where we're doing, people are concentrating and I think disappointed about football.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so am I. But that's not the whole story of the whole thing that we're doing. I mean, we're running a very large, very complicated athletic department. We do have a completely renovated, unbelievable state-of-the-art football stadium. We do have new facilities in baseball, new facilities in golf. We're going to be building new facilities in track. You know, the athletic department is a massive enterprise with over 20 teams, hundreds and hundreds of athletes. You know, we have swimmers breaking world's records in swimming, but people aren't paying attention to this. You know, we have the Olympic swimming coach, the Olympic wrestling coach, the Olympic women's triathlon coach, all working for us, Olympic golf coach. You know, we have all these people working at ASU. So the coaches that we've been hiring, the things that we've been doing, we're underperforming in football. And now is the time to see whether or not our prodigy can make it happen.
So the naming rights to the stadium, how did that happen?
Well, so all along we've been looking for ways to pay for athletics. And so there's many stadiums at colleges and professional stadiums. And so we've been looking for the right kind of partner. You know, we can't just have anybody name our stadium. And so you know, finding financial organizations, healthcare organizations, others that sort of live in the same realm that we live in, you know, they'd like to get their name known, and we'd like to get some resources to help our sports programs to be successful.
I got to thank you. I didn't know how we could make this happen, but it's nice to sit down with you and just have a talk. But I appreciate all the time, your willingness to come on the show and willingness to sit down and do this podcast. So I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, and anytime you want to talk about anything, like there's all kinds of things that pop up, you know, the free speech issues that have been going on. And so the one thing I'll say about free speech, just on my own, since I got you, is that it's very painful for me because I feel at ASU it's kind of interesting. So we're shot at by literally everybody. Well, why did you let that person talk here? Why did you let that person talk here? And I'm talking about conservatives, liberals.
Sure. You had a recent controversy about that.
Yes, Jews, non-Jews, this group, that group. And so what I can tell you is that free speech happens at ASU. And lots of people complain about it everywhere, including inside the institution, but the free speech still happens.
I think that's terrific. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Yep, sure.
All right, that's it.
All right.